all night. If you could please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Present.
Here. Mr. White. Mr. Money.
Here.
Supervisor Finn.
Here. I did speak to Mr. White through emails, and he is running a little late tonight. He was expecting to be late, so he will be here. Let's get out of here real quick. Okay. Purchase. Public input. Mr. Bogdanovic.
George Bogdanovic, 597 Old Hill Road, and president of Space. I saw the article in the paper the other day in the Journal News regarding the Legoland and your concern about the portion of the school revenue that would be involved in that arrangement. I think there's a lot more questions than that, and I'd like to see the town board take a position where we don't really have the details on this project. I had spoken to Supervisor Phillips sometime around the first of the year, maybe just before at the end of last year, asking him if there was any documents in town hall regarding the description of what this project really was. So I tend to be kind of against something like this because of the size of it, and also I'm concerned about the impact on water, existing water, and whether or not that would tend to cause us to have to build a desalination plant, for example, which we just said really don't need in Rockland County. So, sometimes these projects come in promising a lot of benefits, but of course they don't bring up what the potential negatives are, whether it's traffic, whether it's additional costs, whether some of the revenue they're promising is not going to come true because there'll be costs associated with that, whether it's increased water bills or whatever else it is. So my interest is in seeing the town find out more fully what this is all about. It's hard for me to believe that the state will give the town of Haverstraw $3.5 million for a project without having any documentation. The documentation has to be somewhere describing what the scope of this project is, and at least in some form. So I guess I'm curious if you know if there's information available, or if the town, on behalf of the residents, is going to affect our town. Let's face it, it's right across from our prime real estate there at Letchworth. I think we should be involved. In fact, you might want to even consider, being some kind of coordinated review with Haverstraw, because it can be done. Through the secret review, you could ask to be a coordinated review, so that you're actually more than just a town next door, but indeed involved in that review, because I believe it's going to have an impact on, not only the frontage on our property at Letchworth, but many other impacts on our town. So I guess I'd like to ask you to take an active role in this project and see if you can find out some more details, and you can share them with the public, and we can find out at least where we are and what is being proposed, so we know that a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I'll make a few comments back. We're really not sure where we're going with this yet. We're waiting for more information as well. We're asking, we actually fought to sit in negotiations when we heard that the Haverstraw board and the school district board were sitting to negotiate a pilot amount to be paid in taxes. That number, what we're hearing and rumored to be, is about $1 million a year. We feel that is not nearly enough money that a $250 million project would bring in if it was sold, if the property was sold to them. So what we did is we talked about ways of doing this. Now, it doesn't mean we're for the project or against it, but we want to know the information as well. But what we're told during that meeting, when we were basically thrown out of a negotiations meeting between Haverstraw and the school board, and not by the school board, they were open to us being there, but I understand. And I'm not bad-mouthing Haverstraw by no means. I understand that's their property. However, we feel that we should be involved when it comes to the school board. We pay almost 50% of the taxes, and we feel that that's something that this board should be involved in to protect our taxpayers. When we're told that wait for the agreement to be signed, that's when we jump on board and say, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. We need to make sure that there's something in this for the school district. And that's when we sat down and came up with a plan that we could not charge, but put on top of this, I don't want to call it a tax. It's really a supplement. You go to a hotel, you pay a hotel tax. If you go to StubHub and order tickets to a Ranger game, you're going to pay that extra fee. That's what we're looking for. We're not looking to hurt Haverstraw. We're not looking to hurt anyone, or Legoland for that matter. They're still going to collect their full amount that they charge for a ticket. However, we think it's fair that to help such an organization like Legoland, who's aims at 12 years and younger, to help children and to help them succeed in their lives, should be helping our North Rockland School District with our children as well. That's how we feel. So we're asking for that, and of course we're asking for 50 cents for the town of Stony Point as well, simply for the reasons that we're going to put police up there, ambulance, fire trucks. When there's 20,000 people a day coming into a park, you're going to have police calls, you're going to have fire calls, you're going to have ambulance calls, and you're going to have infrastructure problems. So we're not sitting up here saying we're for this plan, for this project. We're against it, but we're saying that if it does come and they can figure out a way to get the infrastructure and the cars in and out of here safe and sound, then we want something for our school district. And that's just why I put that out today. I wasn't happy with the Stony Point wants a cut as the headline, but that's certainly not the reason. And I know I sent it to the Times as well. I see Dylan here, so we're hopefully, I think Dylan, maybe we'll put something out there as well, but if not, I'm sure you will Thursday, great. And hopefully I can get exactly what I sent out. I hope Dylan puts it exactly how I put it out there, unlike Journal News. But if not, we'll certainly get it out there so everyone sees exactly what I wrote.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes,
just add to that. Look, what the surcharge would be, how this town ensures that we're able to benefit from this project is sort of it's a debate and discussion that we'll have later in the process. I think the first thing that we need to make sure of is that just as we, I think, are executing a very transparent process for some of the economic development projects that we are supporting and that we are trying to attract to Stony Point, this board is going to ensure that there is a transparent process that involves the people of Stony Point and the public at large as we discuss Legoland. It is not something that is going to be discussed behind closed doors. It's not something that's going to be discussed in any kind of silo. The people of this town deserve the respect to be able to have a say and be given sufficient information, because as you point out, George, there are a lot of questions with building a full-size amusement park in a part of the county where really there isn't a commercial. It's nestled in between in a residential area and this close to parkland and infrastructure that may not be able to support it. So I think that that's the thing that we're going to be pushing for, at least initially here, is to ensure that this is done in an open and transparent process and not in secret.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, that's all I have signed up for public input. Susan?
No.
Okay. Purchase order request, I believe they're up here. I think Monahan has them in front of him.
I'll make a motion to accept the purchase order request.
Okay. Second. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And order the bills. I believe there's one up here as well, correct? Oh, is that the one we're correcting? I apologize. I'm going to save that for number one then. We're not going to do that. I did. We're going to do that as agenda item number one. Minutes for the January 28th, 2015 and the February 10th, 2015. I believe we've all received them.
It's just the January.
Just January 28th. Okay. So January 28th meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, supervisor's report, be very brief. We have a public hearing we're going to do. I just wanted to mention that I just was told by our recreation department that we received our $10,000 check from ShopRite, and they always support our summer concerts. So on a nice cold day like this, we could think about them, the great Wednesday nights summer concerts coming up in July. So $10,000. So just remember that when you're running out for a gallon of milk or anything else, that the organizations and the local business people that help us out here. Also wanted to mention something very important. I had a meeting with a few members of the New Planet Energy yesterday, which is our gasification plant. There's been a few changes. When you're going through a process, something as large as almost a $600 million plant, there's going to be a few changes along the line. And most of the changes we're going to make along the line are due to the comments and concerns of the public, because that's who we represent up here. The new plant right now is, the plant is the biggest concern, I guess, with people and DEC would be the wetlands property that on 30 Holt Drive. Right now, right now we're not going to be using 30 Holt Drive. We're not going to have any property that will be considered wetland property involved in the gasification plant property. What they're going to do is kind of put that off and move it over to the right a little bit towards the south. Before you go over to the train tracks, which would be 24 and 41 Holt Drive. They will have to remove one small or two small buildings there. So just so everyone knows, we are listening. I know there was some concern from the senior complex, Liberty Ridge, and that it's very important that we hear everyone out here. So that is a change that they've made. We believe that DEC will be happy about this as well. So that's just one of the changes, and we will not be looking for a zone change petition for the 30 Holt Drive, which is the wetlands property. So good news, and maybe speed the process along, being that we're not dealing with the wetlands. Just want to relay that. And also, I wanted to just mention something. We have our public hearing for the waterfront tonight. Our public hearing for the waterfront and the sign law. The sign law is something that we've been discussing here probably for a good 6 months on and off or more. And we made some phone calls today. I believe we've all talked to each other, this town board, and we've come up with a decision that we're going to put this aside right now, forget about it. I know that's going to make George happy. Again, we're listening to people. It's something that we're seeing that not everyone is in favor for, and I don't really know how the vote would have went up here, but after speaking with the rest of the town board today, we've decided that we are going to not even address this tonight, the public hearing. We will open it and close it, and that'll be the end of the sign law for now. So everyone is aware of that. And I believe that's all I have. Okay, police department report, chief. I know normally you do it the first one, but there is something you want to discuss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. We discussed last week, I'd asked for permission to request a list from Rockland County personnel. As you're aware, Officer George Zayas worked his last day, retired after 25 plus years today. And I requested to get the list to police officer list for the town of Stony Point. I got that late yesterday evening, delivered to me from them. And I wanted to speak to you about a nomination. That's the first part of the process. As we move forward, the nomination is such that we would bring that name to personnel. From there, they would do whatever testing they would need to do. And then moving forward for the next list, which would be an appointment list. We've received the list before. We pretty much draw from the same list over and over again. And I have a person that I would like to bring to your attention, one that I've discussed with you in private. Member is currently a member of the Rockland County Sheriff's Department. He had on our list before and received consideration. And then the name is Anthony Agavino, Vincent Agavino. So I would like to ask the board to consider nominating Vincent Agavino so that we can begin the process with Rockland County personnel.
Okay, Chief, I just want to make sure everyone in the audience knows that this is not a new hiring. It's a new hiring, obviously, but not a new position.
Replacement.
Mr. Zayas actually spoke with him today. Today was George's last day. I believe 28 years with the town of Stony Point, maybe
part-time.
Two before that or something. But this is a replacement officer. So I believe the number is 25 right now. And with the new officer, with George's retirement, and replacing him with a new officer would still be at the 25 number.
That's correct, Mr. Supervisor.
Just another information on the new officer that is on the list, and number one on the list is currently in the Sheriff's Department, I believe for the last year and a half. If we were to put this officer on, that he would not need the academy, which is a 6-month, obviously, that we'd have to pay to go through the academy. And correct me if I'm wrong, he would be on the street probably, if we were to do this in the next meeting, or if we nominate tonight and appoint whenever the next meeting or two, he could probably be on the street before the summer, Memorial Day weekend or whatever, where most of our overtime takes place.
That's correct, and that's my hope.
That is our goal.
Yes, it is, and it's something we've discussed in previous hirings. It's something I've spoken to the town board about. Certainly what we do in the first quarter, the first half of the year affects us as we move forward. Right now, most of our vacation period of time, this is a relatively quiet time. We try to take advantage of it by doing most of our training as we can, but as it relates to the overtime, yes, obviously that's our peak vacation period of time, and I would like to have a person in place so that we can possibly affect our overtime budget versus having that person in training during that period of time, and would have no effect on the budget.
Chief, what's the candidate's name?
Vincent Agavino. He interned with us twice during college.
I'd like to make a motion that we nominate Vincent Agavino.
I'll second that. Okay, there's been a motion, a second, any discussion?
I have a question. I thought we were going to review the list, and we normally do that in executive session, and then we come back and have a vote. I know we had a discussion about getting the list, and we had a discussion about the assumption it was on the list. I'm not against the candidate, but it's just that we normally don't do it like this, the process in the past. Unless I was 10 minutes late, I doubt I missed too much of it, so from that standpoint. But I would prefer that it be tabled till we have executive session and have a vote after executive session. That's normal procedure, how we normally do it.
We discussed this in the last executive session. We know the names. I mean, you received the list yesterday. I don't believe you have it with you. But I will say that we interviewed probably, number one on the list, we probably interviewed at least 2 of the members on the list already, correct? Or at least 1 anyway.
We did, and we canvassed it at that time, and at our time, it's based on our discussion, and we had it again last 2 weeks ago, rather. Mr. Agavino was offered a position with the Rock County Sheriff's Department before we were ready to make a hire at that time. Since then, he has been reinstated to our list. He came off the Sheriff's Patrol list. Now he's back on our Stony Point list. And as the supervisor outlined, it's a great fit for us. It's a great fit for us now because of the loss of the officer, because the academy already started, so we would be waiting until...
Just asking for a procedure, that's all.
No, I'm just for the board in general and the topic of the discussion. So that was the reason why I brought it up. I'm trying to move this thing through, like we discussed, by getting the list. They had some problems over personnel, but fortunately they were able to get a list together for us, and she actually hand-delivered it that night, last night.
And just one other thing to add, the procedure, we're trying to move this along as quickly as we can. Obviously, we courtesy to give 2 weeks or 3 weeks notice for the police officer where he is, and also the savings that we budgeted 6 months of a salary of a new police officer at the low grade, coming in, I guess it's 1st grade or 5th grade, I got it mixed up. Fifth grade. And the savings of Mr. Zayas retiring 1 month early, I believe it's a savings of $10,000 alone. And I believe there was a couple dollars somewhere else where we could cover this, where if we waited to June, we wouldn't have on the street for the summer right away. And doing this is at no cost, it's all budgeted money, correct, if we hire him in the next month?
That's correct, and a good point that you bring up is it relates to his current employer. I spoke with the sheriff today, who's up in Albany at a conference with the sheriffs, and obviously he's asking to give a little heads up of, the person being able to give him some 2 weeks notice as he adjusts his own personnel and squads, etc. I may mention that tonight was our town board meeting and what our schedule is as it is moving forward, but he's right. I do want to make sure, however we proceed with it going forward, Mr. White, that I do give him that time and that ability and kind of give him some type of timeline and how we're going to move forward so they can do planning over at the Sheriff's Department, because they did pay for the academy. They did.
I don't see any reason why I can't do it tonight. I just want to do it.
Understood.
Procedure.
Understood.
Okay, any more discussion? So there's been a motion and a second. Want to have a roll call?
Councilman Vasili?
Yes.
Mr. Jennings?
Yes.
Mr. White?
Abstain.
Mr. Lonnie?
Yes.
Supervisor Finley?
Yes. Okay, so we'll do the paperwork and what needs to be done,
And whatever you need in executive session, we'll do anything, whatever, any questions you might have any further, more than I can answer. Okay. Okay.
The other information you provided, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Golf course report, I know they did a lot of rounds this week. It's been really nice out. Department reports, and these are all from last conference. No correspondence, I believe. And as I said, I'd like to jump to the sign law, open the public hearing and close it. Make a motion, oh, well, we don't have to open it. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the sign law.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. It's gonna. And then we have a public hearing on the proposed amendments to the planned waterfront.
Excuse me, but I just want to make a comment on the sign. You know, there's been a lot of discussion on the sign law, and I think this is exactly how it's supposed to work. The board, I commend them, and the supervisor, an idea was brought to the board where you could have a sign, no cost to the residents, and we researched it, and we looked into it, and we listened to the public input, and we agreed that it was something to research, but the final outcome, it didn't benefit the town. There wasn't one resident who spoke in favor. This is how government is supposed to work, for the people. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montana. Well said. Okay, that being said, we'll open the public hearing. Make a motion to open the public hearing for proposed amendments to the planned waterfront zoning district.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Max, I believe you're here in the back. Help us out along the way here. I'll let Max start talking.
Good evening.
I'm going to read the whole thing, Max?
From start to
59 pages here.
So where we are tonight is really a culmination of what has turned out to be an approximate 6-month process here, where initially a local property owner had an idea consistent with the master plan for the waterfront on how to promote economic development of the waterfront. He met with the building inspector, he got some feedback on some proposed local laws, and he submitted it for consideration to the town. We took that law, or that proposed law, and we considered how it compared with other communities around the Hudson Valley, the Hudson shoreline, namely Haverstraw and Tarrytown. And we held a public workshop. That was well back in August, September of 2014. And we opened it up to the public early to get the concerns and feedback on the type of development that would be appropriate and wouldn't be appropriate for Stony Point. Following that, we prepared what is considered an environmental assessment form, Part 1, that details the project attributes, and we discussed the potential impacts that that project might have in a Part 2. Tonight, what you're going to be considering first is adoption of a Part 3 environmental assessment form. What that Part 3 environmental assessment form does is it answers the questions you identified in the Part 2. Questions like, will this have an impact on traffic? Will this have an impact on community resources, aesthetics, parks, historic resources? All the concerns that you identified in that Part 2, I've gone and I've tried to address in this Part 3 EAF. So if you agree with the conclusions that I have come to on those matters, you can adopt that document and then move on with the public hearing. I'd like to go through those, if that's okay with you at this point. Really, the first impact that was identified in that Part 2 was potential impact to historic resources. And historic resources simply because the Stony Point battlefield is located directly to the north of the PW district. I think it might actually be useful to take a step back and talk about what the zoning actually is allowing here. The zoning is for the PW district. And the PW district is quite generally the area east of Hudson Drive, the northern end of Beach Road to the east, and the north side of Grassy Point Road north of the gypsum plant. It's generally the area where the town currently has marinas. The idea behind this proposal would be to allow those marinas the opportunity to construct mixed-use waterfront developments. Now, mixed-use waterfront developments would be development projects that would introduce residential, retail, restaurant, and public access to the waterfront, in addition to the standard marina use. This is not in replacement of. In fact, you have to have an active marina use in order to do the waterfront mixed-use development. It's intended to enhance the abilities of these marinas to weather off-season economics, but it's also intended to introduce more tax ratables to the waterfront and to provide public access and activity along the Stony Point waterfront. So essentially what this law does is it looks at the bulk requirements that were originally permitted in the PW district for marina and generally adheres to them with a few exceptions. One of the exceptions is building coverage. In order to introduce residential uses on top of the marina uses, it does allow additional building coverage of the sites. It also doesn't allow additional height, but it allows the height to be measured from the flood elevation. And this is an important distinction for residential development because you have to build above the flood elevation as it exists today. That's something you'll recall that the town actually did generally for the flood damage prevention law for any home that was damaged during Hurricane Sandy. So basically we've taken it and we've extended it. It's a good idea. Residences ought to be able to construct above the flood hazard area so that they're not hit with high FEMA insurance rates. So essentially the other aspect of this law is it expands the type of uses that can be allowed at the waterfront. And those uses include residences, single-family detached, single-family attached, which most people know as townhouses on fee simple lots. It allows multifamily at a maximum density of 10 units to the acre. Let me just make sure I have that right. Yes, 10 units per the acre. It allows a small degree of local convenience, commercial, and office uses, which cannot be more than 8,000 square feet. The idea is not to have large retail down here. It's to allow for retail that would complement a waterfront environment, where if you go to walk along the river, you might be able to hop into a restaurant or some sort of retail gift shop down there. It deals with the parking requirements and allows the parking requirements to be adjusted to reflect the mixed-use environment, where you have people living there mostly in the evening hours, and you have most of the commercial activity on different hours. It requires architectural review of all structures. And it actually, in response to some of the comments we received, namely from Rockland County Planning, it actually also expands upon the original intention of that height amendment and extends it to include future storm and flood prevention. So it takes into account another project I've been working on with the town, which is the sea level rise and coastal vulnerability study, which you will be receiving a report soon on. And it allows for the planning board to engage any potential applicant with measures to flood-proof the development, either through dry flood proofing, wet flood proofing, incorporating infrastructure in non-traditional areas of the building so it's not subject to flooding, as well as potentially even allowing for future height elevations or adjustments of the buildings as necessary. And as we've seen all along Grassy Point Road and Beach Road, the homes after 30 years have had to be raised a few feet. So if we can incorporate measures that would allow that now, it could definitely save money down the road. So we included that. But getting back to the environmental impacts now, one of the impacts that you had identified first was construction within a 100-year and 500-year flood zone. And that was really the impact that we addressed through those provisions. So the planning board, after consideration of these potential impacts, will have the ability to negotiate with the developer to address how this project will relate to the flood zone, ensure that it's constructed within or above the flood zone for residential spaces, and will have a measure of adaptability in the future, should it be necessary to employ techniques such as flood proofing. With regard to the second potential impact, and that was basically visual impact, where we looked at potential impacts was from Grassy Point Road, approaching the development as you come around the corner, from Haverstraw, past the Riverfront Park. Your view would potentially sweep across that area of the PW district, which we're calling the southern area of the PW district. But those views are already, in large part, blocked or characterized by active commercial uses. You have the Panko oil use, you have the marina uses, storing boats close to or on the roads. You have several trucks being stored along the road as well. So we didn't think that there would be large impacts. The second area that we identified as impact would be traveling north on Beach Road. Again, right now those views are characterized as a working boatyard. So as you're approaching there in the winter, you're seeing the wrapped boats being stored. That would transform into a view of multifamily dwellings similar to what you have down at the harbors, actually at lower elevations. Because harbors are allowed to be constructed up to 60 feet, whereas your zoning only allows for 45. So they will be lower buildings. The next is the views directly across the rail line from Hunter Place. Essentially, the homes along the west side or the east side of Hunter Place all back up to the railroad tracks. And actually, through their second-story buildings, some of them have views across the railroad tracks out onto the river. Currently, the marina under the current zoning can build up to 45 feet. So at any point, those views could already be blocked. However, with the introduction of these buildings, it is likely that some of those views would be blocked. However, none of those views are from public vantage points. And typically that is the realm of environmental impact consideration, are views from public spaces, not necessarily private spaces. With regard to public spaces, the area that we saw that could be impacted was from Jackson Drive. When you're actually traveling around the curve of Jackson Drive, you do see a sweep across what is the PW district and waterfront. Those views will not be blocked. However, they will be transformed again from these working marinas. They will eventually have residential buildings, restaurants, they will have the public plazas and promenades. So there will be an adjustment from where they are today.
Max, within the front. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so when you're saying 45 feet, is that 45 feet from the ground level now, or 45 feet from the FEMA elevation regulations?
45 feet from the FEMA elevations. However, in most cases, the PW district is largely above that elevation. Only probably for the first 50 feet off the river are you below that FEMA elevation. So where you're in the flood zone, you're able to raise it. But the back side of most of these properties, waterfront properties, are already above the FEMA elevation.
I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, and I don't see Bill Sheen here. The new home that was just built, right down on Beach Road there. Do you know the height of that home?
I don't.
Is that over 45 feet?
I don't think it's allowed to go 31 feet.
If it's not in the PW district, if it's a residential district, it's probably a 35-foot
I
limit.
don't even think it's that much. I think it's around 30, 31.
It's 3 10-foot stories.
I mean, I could look up the requirement, but I don't know that that home was built to the requirement or not.
Well, it seems
3
that,
10-foot stories.
excuse me?
It's 3 10-foot stories.
It seems that to go higher than that, I mean, would definitely block the view from Hunter Place, and, you know, if you take a ride down there, that seems, just not an engineer, but that seems a good height to allow it to go.
The 30 or the 45?
The 30, because when you're saying 45, you're saying 45 plus another 14 plus 2 feet.
Not from the back of the property.
Not the back of the property.
So right now, the back of the properties that are abutting the railroad track are well above the 11-foot flood elevation. So if you were to build a property 45 feet from the property line, you're going to be even higher than 45 above sea level, or
Okay, so it would be
55
set
above sea
back.
level.
Okay.
I would say most of the properties that we're talking about would be from ground level up, 45 feet.
It's really the greater of the existing grade or 11 feet. The only time you're ever going to use the 11 feet is when you're closer to the water. So as you get it further away from Hunter Place, you're more likely to raise the building up to get over the flood elevation. The back end of those properties is already above those flood elevations. So you're not starting at 11 feet back there, you're probably starting at maybe 14 or 15 feet back there. And I just want to clarify that 45 feet is not an increase. The existing height is 45 feet. So if, for example, somebody wanted to construct a boatel, which would already be permitted under the existing zoning, it's also permitted under the proposed zoning, clarified. But essentially a building for the storage of boats, you could already build that to 45 feet. And that could already block the views of those homes. So there's not a change in the height, the only change is in the coverage in terms of the size of the building that could be constructed.
But Max, in terms of, you're talking about view sheds and stuff like that, in terms of the distance between the buildings and how to ensure that there are sort of channels where views can be maintained, that's stuff that could all be covered in the planning process and the design process, right?
Yes,
Besides the
absolutely.
site concept.
And it's clarified that when I did my seeker, I did a generic seeker. So I looked at the worst case scenario. I looked at an extremely large building on both of the quote-unquote sites. We have a northern site and a southern site. The reality is, what I considered here as the northern site isn't likely to come in with one application. You might have one application for one marina owner, another application for another marina owner. In fact, one of the comments that was incorporated from the planning board is that we lower the lot area so that different marina owners could come in separately from each other and propose smaller scale developments and not require a massive project to be constructed. So we did in fact do that. It's not likely that you're going to get one huge building or one huge development project. You'll probably get a project that contains a number of multifamily buildings. Again, similar to what you see in Terrytown or Haverstraw, but not necessarily exactly, because again, we are requiring larger setbacks and we are requiring lower heights than those two projects.
Just some of the homes on Beach Road where people are talking about now, Beach Road and Grassy Point Road, they're built that high, but they did not need to go as high as they went. When they were building them, they built them where you could get a car under there, so you could use it as a garage and whatnot. So, and they wanted to be a little extra safe. If you're going to build something up 8 feet, you might as well go 10 or 12. You know, so some of these homes are higher than they really needed to be. But that being said, also we passed a law after many of these homes were destroyed in Sandy, where we the height variance, we allowed them to build higher if their home was destroyed. When they were rebuilding back, they were allowed, if they had to build 8 feet off the ground, we allowed that variance for the height instead of keeping it at, I believe it was 35 down there, whatever it was. But just so people know that some of these homes are higher than they really had to be. Doesn't mean every home we build down there has to be that high.
And that's in appreciation of the fact that FEMA has advisory flood elevations right now that are different from the adopted flood elevations. So if you were to build to current standards that are required by the state, you could build a home at 9 feet, 2 feet of freeboard over the existing 7-foot flood elevation. But the advisory flood elevations are 11 feet. So if you were to rebuild your home today, and in the future, FEMA raises those flood elevations, your flood insurance would be astronomical.
Just so people also know, you say 11 feet, it's not 11, I have to keep going back to that. The top of the seawall on Grassy Point Road is 8.5-foot elevation. So if you took another 3 or 4 feet above that, that's really where the building, and it goes from your first floor. So you wouldn't even be able to park a car on there that way. I just don't want people to think that 11 feet is from the ground everywhere.
No, it's not 11 feet from the ground. It's 11 feet from, I believe it's mean high water, is how the flood elevations are measured.
That being said, I think Councilman Vasili made a great point where we're not just going to come in here and build this one big box with, 500 units in it. They'll be worked out with the developers or any builder that wants to come in and do this and make sure that we're not affecting people who've been living in their homes for years. No one wants to hurt the views or block the views of the beautiful Hudson River. That's why we moved here. But we're going to make sure that they work along with the planning board, this board, and everyone else, any builder that comes forward, to make sure that we're going to do everything we possibly can to make sure the views are not fully blocked or partially blocked. We're going to work alongside them to make sure that doesn't happen.
Moving on, the historic preservation impact speaks to the Stony Point battlefield. That also would be impacted mostly with views of the PW district. You aren't looking across the PW district to the river from the battlefield. You're looking to the side and you're seeing the PW district. Again, there will be an impact, but we don't believe it to be adverse. It's a change from looking at a marina to looking at a residential development. It's a change in character. It's not necessarily a negative quality that is being transformed. With regard to traffic increase, we did commission a full capacity analysis study using available traffic data that was available from the state and county. They regularly do counts on all county roads and state roads. And we did again consider massive full build-out development of every square foot of PW district that could possibly be built on. We assumed would be built on and said, do the roads have the capacity to handle the impacts? To give you an idea of the scale of that, if all the PW land on the northern section, so we're talking about the northern stretch of Beach Road all the way to the battlefield, all the marinas there, plus the non-marina owners that own that land, could construct around 290 units of residential. We assume that the existing approximately 435 boat slips would remain. Additionally, we assumed 8,500 square feet of restaurant, 6,000 square feet of retail would be constructed. On the south stretch, and that is once you get over the Penny Bridge, all the land north of Garvey's Point Road up to Panko would all be eligible for PW district if it had a marina and it was waterfront land. And that would be 156 units, 230 boat slips, 4,500 square feet of restaurant, 3,000 square feet of retail. So that's a significant amount of residential and retail restaurant use. We looked at what that impact would be on the road system, notably the intersections of West Main Street and Route 9W, Beach Road and West Main Street, and Route 9W at Tompkins Avenue. And based on the impacts, at full build-out, you are at capacity. So if you were to build out all the potential development in the PW district that you possibly could, you would be at the capacity of those roadways. The reality is that type of build-out probably wouldn't occur anywhere near 100% over the next 20 years. And there would be ways to increase the operation of those intersections by adding turning lanes or, changing the signal heads to have left turn movements and other measures. But in terms of our traffic analysis, we found that none of those physical modifications to the intersections were actually necessary, even based on 100% build-out.
Max, you said 8,000 square feet on the northern side for restaurants, or?
We considered 8,500 on the north side and 6,000 for retail.
So what does that get you in terms of, what's the size of the average restaurant? And my point being is that I don't want to limit ourselves to the point where, we're able to have sort of one restaurant on the waterfront. We're trying to create a space where people are going to come and spend the day, and there'll be a variety of different options and opportunities for them as they walk from hopefully one of these days from one end of our waterfront up to the battlefield. So what, how do we determine what that means in terms of how many?
We actually had a meeting, it's interesting enough, with a developer in another community who was looking at a waterfront site that had in the master development plan a space was allotted for restaurants, and they allotted for 5,000 square feet of restaurants under that master development plan. And that developer said that the trends in restaurant, chain restaurant and private upscale restaurant dictates a floor area demand for about 2,400 to 2,800 square feet. And what he was saying is that you'd actually, in this instance, which was 5,000, you'd actually put two restaurants that would give variety, bring different price levels to the waterfront. And that's what he was proposing. So that's sort of his developer's take on that question. But you have a wide range. You can look at restaurants in town here. Fireside is probably around 2,000, I would say. 3 or 4? 3. Whereas Halligan's is probably about 1,000. So, it ranges down in Nyack. You have a place like the Yard House up there. That's probably close to 5,000 to 6,000. That's a very big place.
Next, what about the habitual water clubs? Is that in that area?
Well, that's a banquet hall too, right? So,
I don't think so.
don't they have?
in that area.
I'd say that's probably less than 8,000.
I would say that's probably around 4,000 or 5,000. You think it's more? Well, with the deck space or without? Because half the restaurants.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So, well, that's a good question. Would the deck be included in the 8,000? If a restaurant wanted to come in and build a 4,000 square foot restaurant with a 3,000 square foot deck, is that part of the?
That they would tend to use for special events and stuff like that.
Well, it depends if they wanted to do it. The way the law is crafted is it encourages public use of the promenade. So, in terms of it allows yeah, that's fine. I'm looking through the code because I want to get the exact wording here.
Well, I think
It says here, public or private exhibition and performance space are permitted, retail kiosks. This is within the public esplanade. The applicant shall provide town with public access easement. So no, the restaurant couldn't go in there. You would be allowed private exhibition space, but not dining in the esplanade.
No, but I'm talking about a deck, like if they wanted to build, if they're built on the waterfront where they could.
That would then count toward the
That's my
floor
question.
area of the restaurant.
Okay, that was my question.
So I was thinking there might be an opportunity for them to use a public space for that purpose, but that's not in fact in there. So I think we were at traffic. We talked about the community character of the area as potentially being impacted. In terms of the character, whether you're looking at architectural or community character of the area, you're really looking at marinas right now. That is the character of the PW district. It's boat storage, it's cranes, it's heavy equipment, it's storage tanks, fuel tanks. There will be a transformation and a change in character, there's no question. The fact is, in some respects, when you look at the surrounding area and you look at the residential development, for example, in the neighborhoods behind the train tracks, in some respects it is more compatible in character with those areas. With regard to local land use plans, one of the things that we have to address going forward here is consistency with the LWRP. The LWRP that was adopted by the town in 1994 specifies the type of uses it wants to see and contemplate on the waterfront. And for this district, it really does talk about marina uses. It doesn't specifically contemplate residential uses in one way or the other on these properties. However, it does talk about incentivizing public access to the waterfront. So it talks about the fact that these are working boat yards and marinas, but it also says we should be providing public access for recreational enjoyment by allowing people opportunities to get to the water. Well, in the scope of a working boat yard, that's not very practical. There are safety considerations when you're talking about providing public access to the waterfront that are not in character with working marinas. So in a large way, this is consistent with that, in that you are providing an incentive to these marinas to provide public access to the waterfront. That being said, one of the reasons why I'm going to suggest you hold this public hearing open to the next meeting is because the planning board is the official waterfront advisory committee under designation of the town board previously, and they need to comment on the consistency of the LWRP with this proposed zoning. So I'm going to suggest that you go ahead and hold this over so that they will comment, and they will actually, they have this on their agenda for this Thursday.
I believe that's 2012.
For this Thursday. So they will be discussing that and making a finding of consistency or inconsistency. We have provided our comment on the application to them. We believe it's consistent if not contemplated, not specifically contemplated, but not inconsistent is what we're seeing it. But they're ultimately responsible with coming up with that determination after reviewing the LWRP themselves.
So, Max, I think you and I talked about this previously. So what's in there now with respect to, I think the people will be interested in that, in terms of green space, open space, public access spaces? Well, the requirement is quite specific in that the planning board and the verbiage was really discussed, I think, at length here at the workshop. Is that a continuous area of adequate width to support public use and enjoyment shall be provided along the Hudson River frontage. Public or private exhibition and performance spaces are permitted within this frontage so long as they're available to the general public, but not precluding charged admission during normal daytime hours. And that's charged admission for an exhibition space, not for general spaces. Retail kiosks not exceeding 500 square feet are permitted uses within frontage so long as they meet all applicable town requirements regarding peddling and solicitation on public property. The applicant shall provide the town with public access easement or fee title to such frontage property. And that's the important part. So this frontage, which will be of adequate width, but from experience, you're talking about 50 feet in most cases, will be either deeded to the town or an easement will be given to the
town to guarantee public access to the space. And it must be continuous along the shoreline, only interrupted as necessary to provide access to the boat slips, because the idea is to maintain also the boat slips.
That's really important, because that ensures public access, and then we're going to be able to bring people back to the waterfront.
Yes. So with that, I believe those were all the key points. Community services, we talked about the population that this would generate if, again, the entire project were constructed. We looked at using multipliers developed based on census PUMs. We determined that those 346 total units could house up to 950 people. For a town like Stony Point with a population of 12,650, that's an increase, a potential maximum increase of up to 7.5% in population. To determine school children, we really looked to what we had experienced in the harbors in Haverstraw, because it's basically the North Rockland School District. And what we found there is when you're talking about premium waterfront housing, you're talking about low school children generation. The 544 occupied harbors units produce 35 school-aged children, 2 of which attended North Rockland schools. There's actually 2 other public school children whose parents happen to be teachers, and they were sent out of district. We think part of that is the character of the area.
Wait, 2 teachers in the North Rockland School District.
No. 2 out-of-district teachers took their kids to their districts. I guess it's like, no. The reality is the perception on the quality of schools in the harbors may be different than the perception of schools in Stony Point. So what we did is we didn't look at public versus private. We just said, what does it mean if it generates school-aged children at the same rate at harbors, but they're all public school children? And based on that, we would generate about 23 public school-aged children. And North Rockland School District, in the last 10 years, its enrollment has declined by 200 students, as we know.
So that's a full build-out too, right?
That's all, yes.
Everything is built in the whole PW.
346 total units. The reality is,
Max, just please explain it, that is not just in one location. We don't want people to think that.
that is not in one location. That is correct.
That's what we're talking about.
That's every marina, pretty much.
Right.
If you envision every marina in Stony Point, were developed this way. So basically, the only other thing I wanted to caution is, again, we're dealing with generic impacts here. We're talking about the impacts of adopting zoning. We're looking to the impacts, the broad and general impacts of the full build-out. But the reality is, when you have an individual applicant come in, they're going to have to assess site-specific impacts. To some extent, having gone through this process and identify the issues early and determine where issues are and aren't existing helps. But the reality is, when you actually have an applicant, he is going to have to verify, for example, the traffic counts and make sure that they're in the realm of where we anticipated them to be. They're going to have to provide more detailed aesthetics, renderings of what they want to do and consideration of what views may or may not be blocked. But in terms of the generic impacts, it is our suggestion to you as a board that there are no significant adverse impacts that outweigh the benefits, the economic development benefits of this zoning. So with that, we suggest that you adopt the Part 3 and a negative declaration and open the public hearing up for public comment. Again, we recommend that you hold this open at least until your next meeting so that you can get that comment back on the LWRP. And it also provides more opportunity for the public to consider this, which is online and has been online for 2 weeks now on the town website.
Okay, Max, thank you. So your suggestion is to adopt Part 3 and issue a negative deck, correct?
Correct.
I'll make that in form of a motion.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Max. And at this time, if there's anyone from the audience, if you'll just raise your hand and you can come up to the mic, state your name for the record, and ask your questions or concerns. Is there anyone at this time? George?
I'm George Battaglia, 597 Old Maple Road, and president of Space. You know, I like the idea of using our waterfront. I'll have to say that I don't feel well equipped to speak about a lot of the details because I didn't really get a chance to study them that close. I did go and foil the documents yesterday and look them over, but I can't say that I got into the details. However, listening to Max's presentation, which I thought was very good, the height concern is a concern of mine of 45 feet. It sounds like it's 45 feet up and above the 14 feet it has to be raised to meet the current, so is that true? That's not true.
14 feet above elevation, which at many areas we are already at elevation, on ground level.
I see. So we're talking
Correct,
about
saying that, Max, correct?
Yeah, so it's 40 feet above current ground elevation or 11 feet above sea level. So whichever is higher. In most cases, the existing ground elevation is going to be higher.
And this takes into account a discussion that we had during the workshop about setbacks from the river, so that in most cases, we're going to be able to be at elevation, because we're not building, remember we talked about how far back from the waterfront we'd actually be able to build. So this includes those setbacks.
I guess I'd like to start by just saying something I do know something about, and that is the PW district was a result of the LWRP that Max mentioned. I happened to be on that committee, I think it was 1996 or whatever it was, 94. One of the other things I was involved in, so I am very familiar with the reasons why that LWRP was put together, and it was basically to limit the use of the river. Today we might look at it differently and think, well, we like to put restaurants, we like to put commercial uses. Back then I was more interested in let's keep it the way it is for right now. Let's limit it to marinas and boat-related uses. That's kind of what the PW district allows. So boat repair, boat storage, marinas, things like that were boat-related, fishing. It really didn't go beyond that. So I would venture to say, based on my knowledge of the LWRP, it is quite different than what is being proposed. I think I would interpret it a little differently than Max. It did not mention, public access was more mentioned in terms of the town at the time was trying to acquire some property down there from Hanco to get the park, if you remember that, going back that far. We do have access, that was John Shanky's time, I think, if I remember correctly, trying to get the public access to the river. We didn't have any public access to the river very much back then. And so we got a couple little parks that we have. So it is quite different than what was originally proposed, and whether or not the planning board has even read the LWRP, I think they should, if they're going to be talking about it on Thursday. I'm not sure many people have. I think that's even online, that LWRP. But it should be read to at least understand what it allows currently, and this is quite different than what is being allowed currently. I'm not saying that's bad, but it is quite different than what is currently permitted there. In terms of public access, we have 2 parks. How would this plan affect those parks, and we mentioned public access along the shoreline of the Hudson, so would it indeed expand public access? Tom was mentioning not placing buildings within the sight view of certain areas, but would the actual public access, where you could actually go to the river, increase as a result of this plan? It would.
Yes, it would. There'd be walkways around the buildings and along the waterfront.
We're not suggesting a promenade of any kind like they tried to do in Haversham or anything like that. Just that.
Yeah, but not actually, that is a requirement. So it's not called a promenade, and I doubt it looks like what Haversham got in terms of concrete pavers and statutes, but it does require continuous public access along the entire shoreline. So yes, it would definitely enhance and expand access to the waterfront.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it's good that we're doing that.
And it would not affect the 2 parks that we have, Clark Park, and would not affect it.
Clark is outside the PW district, and and the riverfront park, maybe in the PW district, but it wouldn't be eligible for development, so.
So existing commercial development or industrial development like Panco, would this affect that, or would this, it wouldn't encourage additional, that kind of use? It would do, and does that fall within the PW district?
Yes.
So it's an exception to the PW district, sort of pre-existing?
Yeah, no, that, I believe that's a permitted use.
A permitted use within the, yeah, so it's a commercial use. Okay. How about architectural standards? Are we looking for any kind of a look down here when we start talking about land that has not yet been developed for residential use or commercial use? Are we looking to have a look, or is everybody going to come in and do their own thing? I know there's an architectural review board, but I don't always feel that the projects are as well coordinated because they come in one at a time.
You know, I'm usually one of the person up here who's talking about trying to come up with a consistent sort of look and feel for the town and an identity for the town. I think that's very important. I'm just speaking for myself. As applicants would come forward, I think that's something we would pay very, very close attention to, is what does this look like, particularly as you're moving south off of the historic site. What does it look like, and how does it conform to the historic and sort of natural nature of the town? I think that's really important. Me personally, I'm not going to be supportive of hodgepodge type of development, which we have frankly too much of in town already. And this is our opportunity. We're going to have a waterfront district to create a sense of identity within that.
Yeah, I mean, even the roofs, hey, look at them because you're looking down on some of that stuff. And you spent some time on the Letchworth proposal to put time into thinking about an architectural look, so I didn't see that mentioned in the plan unless I missed it. That I knew there would be an architectural review, but I didn't see that specifically. And if I missed it, that being specifically addressed. Convenience stores sound like a good idea. I'm not against convenience stores, but I also know they tend to attract a lot of litter and stuff. I'm not sure what we can do about that, but just by the very nature of a convenience store where a lot of things are disposed of, I guess I wouldn't want to see that add to the trash down by the water. I'm not sure what we can do about that, but that could be a concern of mine.
We prefer not to have another 7-Eleven.
Yeah, I don't think convenience store is what we're looking for on the waterfront. We're looking for more of a summertime ice cream shop or similar to that somewhere.
Right, yeah, because, I preach a lot, you look around a lot of convenience stores, you see nothing but paper, basically.
I think that's a technical term, right?
Okay.
Local convenience, commercial,
commercial.
includes things like summertime ice cream parlors.
Okay. In this proposed zoning amendments, we talk about a continuous area. The number H talks about a continuous area of adequate width to support public use and enjoyment shall be provided along the Hudson frontage. Is that what we're talking about, this public access area? Okay. So that could cross even private and public properties. In other words, would private property owners allow public access along that right of way too? Is that the way you're thinking of it?
It has to be, it could be privately owned with a public access easement, that is correct.
Okay.
And that is probably, when we go to planning, where we'll try and push if we can, because that's where you can get, for example, a homeowners association police litter and things like that, and still have public access.
So, as Max mentioned, you just really got the part 3 today. I didn't have a chance to really look at it because it was just provided tonight. And, I would second the idea of holding this over, certainly, because I just like to digest this a little bit better and maybe give other people a chance to understand it a little bit better too. But it sounds like a good idea, and I like a lot of the things I've heard. Should the Department of State be looking at this too as a reviewing agency? I didn't see them on the list. I know when we got involved with the DSAL plan, it was a waterfront project, and the Department of State did review it, but I didn't see them as one of the interested agencies. So it is a type 1 secret review, right? So I wasn't sure if that would be something the Department of State, which I think does coastal review.
When there's an LWRP, DOS delegates local actions to local review.
Yeah.
If there was a federal action, they would go to DOS, and DOS would tell them to come here because we have an LWRP.
Okay, so that was one of the things I want to understand too, because it's been a while since we developed an LWRP. And I know we're unique almost, I think, in having an LWRP in Stony Point, but I don't think we use it that much. I don't think, one of any of you even know what's in it. But I guess I was interested in comparing this to an LWRP. Does the LWRP when the planning board's going to review it on Thursday and look at it and say, well, it's, you know, it's close to what the LWRP is. I haven't said I agree with that, but an LWRP, could that be modified or changed? We've had an LWRP, and I mentioned, since 1994. Should this be integrated into an LWRP? We had a committee that actually formed the LWRP originally. It was, you know, quite involved with public input. So we probably should understand what it says, and does this kind of a project then modify that so our new LWRP, which I think is a unique document for Stony Point, I don't know if a lot of river communities have it, it gives us a certain amount of protection and standing, right, as a riverfront community. I know when Conrail, CSX was coming through, they had to make special considerations for coming through the town because we had an LWRP. So I think it's an asset for us to have it, understand it, but it should be a living document. If we think that what the LWRP had originally pointed out, which was mainly boat marina uses, which now we seem to want to do other things, maybe we should modify that to include these uses that you're suggesting in this. And I guess I don't understand.
I'd like to address that when you're done.
Yeah, I'd like to understand that, so I guess how that works with the changes that you're suggesting. Okay. That's about it. I'll hold any other questions I have until next time when I have a chance to be a little better prepared, but I appreciate the information, and it sounds like it's moving in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Max, would you like to address that?
Yeah, I actually do, because, you know, George raises a very good point. The LWRP does provide a lot of benefits to the community. I think that when the LWRP or the Waterfront Committee prepared that document back in 1994, they did it in a way that was actually very good to specify that they wanted water-dependent uses of the waterfront, the PW district. That's how they drafted the PW district. They were silent on residential. They didn't say, we do want it, we don't want it. There was probably a presumption at the time that it was incompatible, frankly. I think that the integrated waterfront development where you have marinas and you have condos or townhouses and you have public access, all of that was at one point, I think, seen as incompatible. And I think the developments that have sort of changed the yardstick on that have really developed since 1994. So I don't think this was contemplated one way or the other. They knew they wanted to have working waterfront uses. They knew they wanted to have sailboats and docks and motorboats, and they wanted to have marinas and clubs for people to come in off the river and have a meal. And they did know that they wanted to enhance public access to the waterfront. It didn't specify the parks in the PW district. It actually specified that they wanted to try and encourage public access to these private boatyards and marinas. And they wanted to figure out incentives to provide this type of continuous access, which they wanted to hook up into the parks. That being said, I think it's a very good idea for this board to consider. There is money available from the Department of State, grant money, to prepare and update LWRPs. Once you have an LWRP, you can actually apply to the DOS for projects that you list in your LWRP. So they sort of encourage the planning, and then once you have the plan, they encourage you implementing your projects. So I would encourage you to look into grants. Usually the LWRP grant for planning comes every 2 years, and every year they allow money for the projects. So and actually to do the plan, it's an every 2-year process. I'm not sure if this year is a planning year, but certainly if you have a grant writer, they could look into that. If you'd like me to, I can as well.
But that wouldn't stall us moving forward.
I don't think so. Again, it's my take, and with all respect to George's disagreement, that no, the LWRP does not preclude this type of activity, because again, we're not trying to push the boatyards out. We're not trying to push the marinas away. We're trying to expand the use of the marinas. We're trying to make it more than a marina, and we are trying to provide the public access by providing an incentive to the marina owners, which is very close to the language that is in the LWRP currently. So I don't think we have to amend it to do this, but with regard, now know that when we talk about the coastal zone in Stony Point, we're pretty much talking about anything east of Route 9W. So a lot more than what you think is waterfront is in this LWRP area. All of Holt Drive is in this LWRP area. All of Tompkins Avenue and the neighborhoods off of it are in this LWRP.
That's the plan for the zone, for the waterfront, right?
It is, but it's more than just the waterfront. And I think the reason why communities use a lot of area is because of this grant money that's available. So they try and put more than just their waterfront in the coastal zone. I think with the idea of how much has changed in the town since 1994 with regard to everything east of Lovett. Lovett is east of 9W. It's contemplated in the LWRP. It's not there anymore. So I think it's time, if we have the resources, or if we can get the resources from DOS, that maybe the town wants to reconsider the LWRP update.
Quick question for you, and unrelated to this LWRP issue. Going back to the commercial space, some of the marinas there currently have sort of members-only facilities, whether it's a pool or it's a playground. How are we dealing with that? And if they had a members-only facility, does that count against the commercial space that's contemplated for the rest of the development of that parcel?
No, that wouldn't count toward. They're required to do 50 square feet of retail or restaurant floor area per residential unit. Okay, so that would not count. A members-only club would not count toward that. However, they would still be allowed to have a members-only club as part of the marina. It just wouldn't count toward that 50 square feet of retail or restaurant. And it could not be located in that 50 feet or so setback from the river that must be dedicated to public use.
Right, okay, good.
Thank you, Max. Is there anyone else from the public? Mr. Ehlers. Mike, just state your name for the record.
Mike Ehlers, 16 Jenkins Avenue. Good evening. One thing concerns me, if any type of development on the North District, and that is where the north end of Beach Road meets Tompkins Avenue in a stop-and-go tunnel. I can't, and I think you did a great presentation, but I can't think of any type of development that wouldn't generate traffic, especially when you're trying to attract people to use the waterfront. That stop-and-go section is just going to get clogged up, and the main route will be Beach Road wrapping around East Main Street. And that would probably make, and then if you had development on the south section, you're probably talking about traffic lights and a lot of different changes on the existing intersections. And that's really all I have to say. I thought it was great, but as a leading advocate for Stony Point Skate Park project, the LWRP grants have really gotten my attention. Thank you.
How many people knew he was going to mention the skate park? Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else from the audience? Frank?
Frank Collier, 10 Board, Stony Point. Just a question. Has any consideration been given to the possible chippy thing coming through? That kind of seems to throw a wrench in most of these plans.
It's not something that we discussed in this, but we do not believe it will affect any of the properties. Am I correct in saying?
Well,
certainly not in the Grass Point area.
it came up early in the process in the workshop. If it is as impactful as it could be, certainly, there is possibilities there. At some point, however, the community has to decide whether you're going to say, well, chippy might come through and therefore let's throw our hands up and not do anything, or do we want to proceed with growth and development and economic development of the waterfront, and if chippy comes through and they end up using eminent domain or something like that, they got to pay more because the land's worth more, because you've done something with it, you've expanded the uses of it. At this point, it would be my suggestion that you proceed with well-planned, use of the waterfront, and if it interferes with them or they have to deal with it, then that's something they have to deal with.
Frank, one of the reasons why we've been vulnerable, and I really believe this, one of the reasons why they've zeroed in on Stony Point for that line to come out of the water is because if you drive along our waterfront, it is a significantly underutilized asset. We do not have investment capital going in there currently. There are not jobs on the line currently. There are not a lot of homes on the line currently, and so they figure, hey, you know, these guys aren't doing anything down there. They've got an underutilized resource, and we're just going to dig our trench. So I think it's really important for us to demonstrate that this is a thriving community on the waterfront that will generate jobs, that will generate revenue for this town, and that will bring people back to the waterfront. So that gives us, I think, a lot more ammunition to fight this thing coming on land.
That sounds really good. The only concern is that once Chippy comes through, they have to allow anybody else to come through too. So when you have the second, third, fourth, and the fifth that you could possibly want to come down, and their cable's offset by a certain amount, you could have 50 or 100 feet out from their right of way, which I think would impact it. But I guess you talked about it. I guess there's nothing we can do about it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I believe there was someone in the back. I see a hand in the middle. Your hand was up next, I think, before. Yeah.
Donna Jesse, 50 Gilmore Drive. I'm in favor of using our waterfront properly. I just wanted to know, with regard to public access, who is responsible for maintaining that area? The town, the private community?
It will be a private community, anything that's in there. The town, if you're looking for like a town employee to go clean the area, this would be a homeowner association. Most likely, listen, there's nothing right now that we're building, but that's something that the town would have to obviously make arrangements for.
Okay, but if there are multiple areas that are being developed by different individuals, are they each responsible for those public access areas?
I believe that would be correct in saying yes.
I think that's the idea. We've allowed for the town to take that property, but we've also allowed for the town to take easements, which allows for the private property owner to maintain ownership and be responsible for the maintenance.
Okay, so there wouldn't be insurance problem with the town?
Not if it's private or public easement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent question.
Thank you. Susan?
Susan Fulgaris, 87 Moth Farm Road. The first thing that makes my skin crawl is the word private in regards to the waterfront. I live underneath a private development that is supposed to be responsible for their roads and their waterways and their drainage. It came to blows, fish heads thrown in the driveway, my house was paintballed. I can go on with 3 feet of water flying down the road. That was a private development who was in charge of taking care of those areas. There is also, behind my head, a public area that was marked, and I can't remember the association, as a public park. The problem is, you can't get to it. So we got a public park at the top of the mountain.
I've come to it.
Jeff, you park on the side of that road, you're gonna have all kinds of nice little, and we'll see Chief a lot, okay? So when you say it'll be a private development, we'll have a homeowners association. The town of Stony Point has not been real successful in monitoring their homeowners associations. So I have a real problem with that. And we can start with detention basins, retention basins, pipes, catch basins that go nowhere. The second is, I realize that we're working very hard to develop our waterfront because our waterfront is the future of the town of Stony Point. The Champlain-Hudson Power Express, the Blackstone Group, and the governor are going to make sure we don't have that future. The Champlain-Hudson Power Express is slated to come on ground, crossing over 4 high-pressure natural gas lines, a 42-inch, 24-inch, 36-inch, and a 26, I believe, in the Ramapo Fold, in front of Indian Point. And to make sure that nobody snags their line, they're going to put concrete mattresses that weigh thousands of pounds on top of said electric line. Don't worry, the pipes won't crack or fracture, and we won't have an earthquake. But the problem with it is, those pipes go underneath the railroad track, which lay right up against the Hudson River. They're carrying hundreds of millions of gallons of backing crude. Do you know what they did in Virginia when they had a train derailment? They let it burn because there was no way to put it out. That's what's on our waterfront. And then we're going to take the Champlain Hudson Power Express, just like a match. We're going to lay it against that rail line. And we're going to wait. Because after all, I can guarantee you personally, we'll never have a train derailment in this county. I vote we do try to develop our waterfront. I want to know what the 5 of you are going to do with the Champlain Hudson Power Express, because we cannot coexist. The right-of-way is 150 feet. You will not be allowed to cross it with roads. You will not be allowed to cross it with utilities. You will not be allowed to blacktop it. That pretty much puts an end to what we can do at our waterfront. And what I find amazing, and Jeff, I have to compliment you, in figuring out we will not disturb our wetlands. The Champlain Hudson Power Express is going to frack our wetlands for well over 1.5 miles. It's my understanding fracking is illegal in the state of New York. But we're going to see that unless the 5 of you do something. The Champlain Hudson Power Express will be the first of its sort. And Tom, you understand fair trade. You can't lay one line down. This is one line of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at 1,000 megawatts on top of all 4 of those high-pressure gas lines. And I want to know what the 5 of you are going to do about it so that our waterfront can be developed in a profitable, sustainable, safe manner so that when that train does derail, we don't burn at least 2 towns down to the ground because you cannot put out backing crude. And the other one little part of the whole thing, when you mention taxes and Legoland, Champlain Hudson Power Express will bring very little in rateable, and every parcel it crosses, it will devalue. What are we going to do about it? Because if my school taxes go up any more, I'll just walk away and go bankrupt, because we're not going to be able to pay them. So I vote absolutely, let's develop our waterfront. But what are you going to do? There's 5 of you up there. What are you going to do about Blackstone's little run at New York State domination? Let's see. They own the Champlain Hudson Power Express. They're the finance. They've made financial deals with CSX in which they have stood in front of the CSX employees and said, and I quote, and I've got the PowerPoint for it, "We will help you solidify your claim on the land that you cross." So is CSX going to do the eminent domain and take our property? And Chippy will justify it? I have a problem with that. They're financing Hydro-Quebec. And in case everybody missed my email on it, why don't you go find out who owns Legolands? It's Blackstone.
All right, so let's stick with the waterfront.
So, oh, it is the waterfront, Jeff. How do you bring one developer and one money-banked person, Legoland, CSX, the DSAL, Champlain Hudson Power Express, and say, we can develop our land in our town and be fairly heard? What are you going to do about it? Our waterfront is our last hope for sustainable building. How do you get away from the traffic issues? We hear Legolands, when are we going to put 7,000 cars? Has anybody discussed the track down Route 9W and the 20 to 40 feet they've got to take?
Waterfront.
It all goes to the waterfront, Jeff. We can't get there if we don't have the roadways. So somebody needs to take a look at the universal building that's going on around here so that we can develop sustainably, so that we can get people on and off our waterfront. How are we going to cross the waterfront when CSX will not, under any circumstance, allow you to touch the Tompkins Avenue overpass? Because if they do, it has to be built back according to federal code. And what are you going to do about the backing crude oil trains and the match that's called the Champlain Hudson Power Express, that when it derails, it'll burn Stony Point to the ground? Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Is there anyone else in the audience for public input? No? Okay, we will keep this open until at least next meeting, after, I believe after the 26th, which is Thursday, planning board. So, at this time, we'll move on, and if there's no more, let's go on. One more, no? All right, it will be open. You are able to come back next one. Max looks like he's in a rush to get somewhere to another meeting. Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to number 1 on our. Number 1 on the agenda is an abstract correction. This is a simple error from last month. Thank you, Tom. It's just a number issue. So the page 2 total of 545,798. 1 is 545,798. Okay, there's been a motion. I believe a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2 is the Children of Mary requesting the commuter lot. Children of Mary Nursery School will be having its 11th annual tag sale on Saturday, April 18th, my wife's birthday, 2015, with the rain date of Sunday, April 19th. I'd like to request the use of the commuter parking lot across from Hogan's Diner. Tag sale will run from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. with a setup time of 7:30.
I'll make a motion to allow the use.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is a simple request from our beautiful new soundstage that we had, that we received in July of this year. And the West Haverstraw Fire Department is looking to do it for their Rockland County parade. It will be held in West Haverstraw this year. The town of Haverstraw has allowed us to use theirs many times, and the Ramapo's been in here in Orangetown. So I think it would be an honor for us to give back to the volunteer West Haverstraw Fire Department the use of our stage for September 19, 2015 for the Rockland County Firemen's Parade.
So moved.
Thank you, and I'll second that. There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 4 is the seasonal retires for 2015. This was a simple mistake of last month. We hired, I believe it was 12. I keep going back to next month, but last meeting is what I mean. We hired 12 seasonal workers that were returning. And there was an error in one of them. The 2 names that we have in front of us that were on the list last week were off by, I believe it was 60 cents for a total of $17.32 for both. I'll make that form of motion, that the price be $17.32 for the 2 people we have in front of us.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And I, of course, have to thank our golf department for our golf course crew for getting everything ready so early with this weather, and we'll certainly be ready for early spring. Number 5, contract modification for Simmons Recovery. This is at no extra cost. This is just something where we're still dealing with FEMA issues. Matter of fact, I received a blue file, which is very important that we received with FEMA from Irene, believe it or not. From Irene, we received a folder today. But we're working very close. 2012, I believe. 2012 or 11? This was 11. Anyway, not to go off the track, but Simmons Recovery is a consultant firm that we hired probably over a year ago, and we just have to keep extending their contract because there's still work to be done. At no extra cost, but the contract does have to be extended. So I'll make the motion to extend the contract, the term of the contract to not exceed 24 months without written authorization from us.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And just for the record, they have helped us out tremendously. They've got us a lot more money than we would have on our own, simply because this is something that they do every day. And working alongside our finance department, it is actually going very well with this company, so I commend them. 6 is a resolution for the board meeting dates. I'll be real brief. Resolution, make a motion for a resolution confirming the schedules of the Town Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Board, Technical Advisory Committee, and an Architectural Review Board for the following dates. And again, this is just really a reminder, but there has been some talk and speculation of meeting date changes, so this is just to make sure everyone realizes. Section 1, the regular meetings of the Town Board shall be the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month at 7 p.m. right here. The regular meetings of the Planning Board shall be on the fourth Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. right here as well. The regular meetings of the Technical Advisory Committee shall be on the second Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. at Town Hall. The regular meetings of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be held on the first and third Thursday of every month at 7 p.m. here as well. And the regular meetings of the Architectural Review Board shall be held in the third Wednesday of each month at 6 p.m. at the Town Building Department on East Main Street. This resolution shall take effect immediately, and I make that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 7 is a discuss emergency operations director, who happens to be our first Stony Point chief, Chief Skirty, Steve Skirty, who is took over right after Sandy. Actually, right during Sandy, he was alongside of us, working very close. And my mistake, when we did our budget this year, the salary was to be $4,800. Wasn't budgeted money, and I never, at the beginning of the year, we were supposed to let our finance department know that, and it never did happen. So I'll make a motion that we correct that number to be $4,800 annually. And I'll make that form of motion.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second discussion. I just want to say a few things. In the past, we've had other people that did this, and they worked very hard at it. But I will say that Chief Skirty has gone above and beyond. He goes to meetings, and he's out with hazmat teams and Red Cross and the police department and our fire department, and he's over with Orange and Rockland when it snows, and they're in our police department. So I want to just let everyone know that we're in good hands when it comes to emergencies here. And he's always working, and he's just such a great guy. And I just wanted to give him a little compliments on the job he's doing. So, on that being said, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, bond resolutions. This is something that we've been working on for a few meetings now, but we're all ready to just, we've got the exact numbers now in front of us. Mr. White, you weren't here in the beginning, but I did hand out. These are the actual numbers. The numbers were actually wrong. You know? So I will make, for the number 8 is refunding the bond resolution. I'll make a motion refunding bond resolution of the Town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the issuance of refunding bonds of the town in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $4,265,000 pursuant to the local finance law, and providing for other matters in relation thereto, and the payment of the bonds to be refunded thereby. That is in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 9 is to set a public hearing for our sewer districts 1, 2, and 3 for a bond resolution. Anytime there's a bond resolution for a special district, we have to set a public hearing. So the resolution of the Town Board of the Town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing a public hearing under Town Law Section 202-B relating to certain improvements to the town's sewer districts number 1, 2, and 3. So I'll make that in form of a motion.
Second.
Do I have to, obviously give it a date here. Is it on? March 10th. Okay, so you got that as March 10th. I don't see that here, so March 10th. Okay, it's in the form of a motion. I believe there's a second. Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 10 is the public improvements golf course bonds. We'll get through these bonds. I'll make this in form of a motion, a bond resolution of the Town Board of the Town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the town to undertake the acquisition and installation of various public improvements and equipment at the town's municipal golf course, stating the maximum estimated cost thereof is $171,400, appropriating said amount therefore, and authorizing the issuance of up to $171,400 in serial bonds of the town to finance said appropriation.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Again, this is, a lot of this stuff we used to ban, so now that we're bonding, and we have to go through this, so it's just a
Just make a
formality. Go ahead.
I asked financial director this the other day. Last time we said we're gonna do 3 big ones, okay? So I understand we have to break each piece out and identify each resolution, so it's all been approved as one big piece, and each of the individual pieces. These are, am I correct on that?
Yes.
You're correct.
Yes, they have to break it out based on the PPUs, the useful life of the thing and the funds. So they break them out, and these resolutions, it's going to be issued to save the money of the bonds, but it will be.
And but they'll equal the list of the expenditures that we
paid.
approved last time, yes.
Correct.
Okay. And do we have to withdraw the resolution we made 2 meetings ago for the main 250? Because I don't know.
I think we're going to do that next week.
Okay.
I did see your email on that. I know we talked to the town clerk on that, so I believe we do have to do that. I don't know if we have to, but we should, be never not that exact number. Going back 2 weeks ago.
Right, I have a million we want to.
Yes.
Right, because we already.
I don't believe we have to, but
Right.
I mean, you know better.
I've been more concerned with the.
I think it said up to.
Yeah, see,
We're doing less.
So I don't think it.
Did say up.
Sure.
Okay. There's been a motion, and a second. I believe we passed that. Yes? Number 10. Number 11 is the public improvements for the bond resolution. Bond resolution of the town board of the town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the issuance of up to $88,000 in serial bonds of the town to finance the cost of various public improvements.
Motion.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I believe we have 3 bonds. Number 12 is the golf course equipment bond resolution. Bond resolution of the town board, the town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the issuance of $10,300 in serial bonds of the town to finance the acquisition of original equipment for use by the town's municipal golf course.
Motion.
It's been a motion. Second. Any second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we have number 13 is the highway equipment bond resolution. Bond resolution of the town board of the town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the acquisition of equipment for use by the town's highway department, stating the maximum estimated cost thereof is $72,400, appropriating said amount thereof, and authorizing the issuance of up to $72,400 in serial bonds for the town to finance said appropriation.
So moved.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we got 2 more. Drainage improvements, bond resolution. Bond resolution of the town board of the town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing certain drainage system improvements on Elm Avenue, Lake Road, and Ayers Street, and related road reconstruction and repair, stating the maximum estimated cost thereof is $277,000, appropriating said amount thereof, and authorizing the issuance of up to $277,000 in serial bonds of the town to finance said appropriation.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And the last one is Parks and Recreation Equipment Bond Resolution. I read the rest of it, so I'll just keep going. Bond resolution of the town board, town of Stony Point, Rockland County, New York, authorizing the acquisition of equipment for use by the town's Parks and Recreation Department, stating the maximum estimated cost thereof is $88,400, appropriating said amount thereof. Therefore, and authorizing the issuance of up to $88,400 in serial bonds to the town to finance appropriation.
So moved.
Second?
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And number 16 is the 2014 budget transfers. I believe it was, there's just 2 lines. We passed a whole bunch last week, 2 weeks ago. Make a motion for the 2014 budget transfers that are in front of us.
Second motion.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And number 17 is something we're going to table again until we hear back from our auditors, who were in actually all last week doing the audit. And so we have to wait to hear back from them for the research. So I apologize for having that on there, and we'll deal with that on March 10th. That being said, make a motion to go into the executive session. There will be no votes taken for personnel matters.
Second.
Okay? Motion second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Before you walk out, I recognize that we have a Cub Scout or Boy Scout in the room, a Boy Scout in the room today. I have a feeling that he's here and he's going to come up and have me sign something. Okay, it's hard. But a lot of times, we're going to be, would you mind giving your name, son?
Michael Hernandez.
Michael Hernandez?
Is he what?
Michael is here, a lot of times we have Boy Scouts come in and they have to come in and understand what's going on in government and whatnot, to see what's going on. And sometimes I have to sign off on it, but it's nice to see the young children, I don't want to call you children, young men come to our meetings and see how government really works. I hope you had a good time here, I'm sure you didn't. But, but it is nice to see you coming out, and we owe a lot back to our groups because they do a lot of Eagle Scout projects in our town, which we're hoping in March to get all 5 that we've had done so far to come out. So I thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here, and keep up the good work, because I know you do it. Okay? Thank you. Okay, that being said, meeting is adjourned to executive session.